One thing that's really neat is that as we start to understand even just some small pieces of Revelation, that begins to shed light on other pieces as the whole thing coheres in filling out the imagery of how the threads of the Old Testament are tying together. So we saw the church of Ephesus and the church of Laodicea in Revelation 2 through 3 were both in danger of a Babylonian exile, that they were in danger of having the lampstands of the holy place plundered and taken from them and being vomited out of the land. So when we get to Revelation 18 and read about the fall of Babylon, and it says, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues." Now this made more sense, because when we just read Revelation just naively and found this reference to my people needing to come out of Babylon, well, where did that come from? In the description of Babylon starting in chapter 17, I don't see indication that God's people are in Babylon. The Christ's people are in Babylon. What are God's people doing in Babylon such that they have to come out? Well, the threat was made, the warning was made to the letters of the seven churches that you're in danger of the same thing that happened to Israel is going to happen to you, just as Solomon failed to be he was blessed and failed to lead the nation in being a blessing to the Queen of Sheba and to the nations, that the word of the Lord may go forth and spread out from Zion to the ends of the earth. And he just accumulated his 666 talents of gold, such the nation went on decline. Oh, you're not going to use the blessings to be a blessing? Then you don't need the blessing of a kingdom and a temple and the Shekinah glory in the city of Jerusalem. God takes all of those away as a natural consequence, and you don't want the blessings of God to be dispersed over the face of the earth, filling the earth with God's glory and fulfillment of the creation mandate. You're sounding a lot like the people of Babel. Maybe you need to go back to Babel if that's what you want to be like. And so Israel goes into Babylonian exile. The churches were warned they would go into Babylonian exile at the beginning of Revelation. And so when we get to the end of Revelation, it sounds like you've got at least some, if not all, at least some churches that did not heed the warning, and the Christians have gone into Babylonian exile that they need to come out of, just like the Israelites, the Jews, making Aliyah, going back from Babylon to the land of Israel when the decree of Cyrus went forth, and they were allowed to start rebuilding the city walls in Nehemiah and start rebuilding the temple in Ezra, and Zechariah prophet encouraged them to keep going and keep building the temple. Now, what I'm saying on some level is not original. In fact, on one level this has very deep support from Protestant history, because I think I've said before, the Protestants, the early reformers, saw in the image of Babylon that Babylon is Rome, the city on 7 hills, associated with the Roman Catholic Church. They would say the Pope is the Antichrist. That's in the Book of Concord and the original Westminster Confession of Faith. This is part of their historicist understanding that you can go through Revelation and tie each chapter directly to events in world history, and especially in church history. So the Protestant reformers said, yeah, the church went into Babylonian exile for 1,000 years with the papacy. And Luther wrote a book called The Babylonian Captivity of the Church, in which he talked about the 7 sacraments and how 5 of them were man-made extra-biblical sacraments and only 2 of them were Christ-instituted sacraments. But more than the content of the book, I like the title of it. It's The Babylonian Captivity of the Church. I think he was tapping into what Revelation was pointing at, is that the churches are in danger of going into Babylonian captivity, and if they do, they need to come out. And the reformers looked at that and said, "Ooh, That's exactly what happened. The church went into a Babylonian captivity, and now with the Reformation, we're that Babylon being Rome, the papacy, and now we're calling people come out of Babylon, come out of the Roman, the papish Roman Babylon. And so the book of Revelation served a very important purpose in the Reformation, because an understandable pushback that the Reformers got from the Catholic Church was, how dare you say that if you're saying that the papacy is off track, that the whole doctrine of justification of faith has been obscured to the point of being lost for 1,000 years, how dare you say that Christ's church has been in 1,000 years of dark ages? This is Christ, our victorious King. How could Christ's church be so shrouded in deceit and deception and following the Antichrist, the false prophet for so long? If you didn't have the book of Revelation, that would be quite an audacious claim to be making. And they're saying, that's why Luther's, what are you, a prophet? You're coming with a new message? And so the Reformers had a response to that, is that, no, actually, we're not just saying, we're not the first ones to be saying this. John predicted it, that the church would go into a Babylonian captivity to a city on 7 hills, which is Rome. And so the book of Revelation undergirded that the claim of the Protestant Reformation, that the church had lost the truth and followed deceptive ways for a very long period of time, that's not a failure on Jesus' part to be the high priest of his church. That's actually what Jesus himself said would happen. Now, I don't think that the Protestant, the Reformation view was exactly right in tying these symbols so closely. Babylon equals Rome. Antichrist equals Pope. The Babylonian captivity of the church is Roman Catholicism and the 7 sacraments. I think that's tying things down too specifically, but I do think that it makes sense. And again, the Revelation has these general principles, a general warning of Babylonian captivity. I think it's even larger than what Luther envisioned, but the historicist understanding is one particular application that makes a lot of sense and resonates with the themes and the warning of the church going into Babylonian exile and needing to be called out from it, just as happened and continues to happen in the Reformation.